Hello students, welcome to this lecture on fundamental rights and minority protections. The fundamental rights enshrined in Part 3 of the Constitution are the cornerstone of India's democratic system. They ensure that all citizens, regardless of religion, caste or language, enjoy freedom, equality and dignity. For minorities, these rights are vital because they guarantee protection from discrimination and provide mechanisms for cultural and religious preservation. Unlike privileges, these rights are universal, applying to every citizen equally, yet their design is sensitive to India's diversity. The framers believed that true democracy required both individual freedom and collective security. Fundamental rights thus bridge the gap between personal liberty and group identity. They also restrict state power, ensuring that governance operates within moral and legal boundaries. Through equality before law, freedom of religion, cultural autonomy, and constitutional remedies, minorities find assurance that their identity and participation are protected by law. This lecture explores how fundamental rights read with Articles 29 and 30 form a coherent structure of inclusion, where minorities are neither excluded nor treated separately but integrated into the Republic through justice and equal citizenship. The evolution of fundamental rights in India. The idea of fundamental rights evolved through India's struggle for freedom and exposure to global human rights movement. Early demands for rights appeared in the 1895 Constitution of India Bill and later in the Nehru Report of 1928, which included freedom of religion and cultural expression. The experience of colonial repression convinced national leaders that rights must be legally enforceable, not mere declarations. The framers studied the US Bill of Rights, the French Declaration, and the Irish Constitution while drafting India's charter. They recognized that political democracy without guaranteed rights would lead to majoritarian dominance. Therefore, the Constituent Assembly placed fundamental rights at the heart of the Constitution. These rights not only protect individuals from arbitrary state action, but also uphold the moral idea of equality in a plural society. For minorities, they serve as shields against both special prejudice and political exclusion. Thus, the evolution of fundamental rights reflects India's transition from colonial subjugation to constitutional self-governance based on liberty, equality, and fraternity for all citizens. Part 3 of the Constitution, the core of democracy. Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, covering Articles 12 to 35, forms the bedrock of democratic governance. It transforms the moral values of the preamble into enforceable legal rights. These rights guarantee freedom, equality, and dignity, protecting citizens from arbitrary state power. The inclusion of judicial enforcement through Article 32, described by Dr. Ambedkar as the heart and soul of the Constitution, makes them unique. Fundamental rights apply universally, yet they have special significance for minorities as they safeguard identity, religion, and culture. Articles 14 to 18 ensure equality before law. Articles 19 to 22 protect personal liberty, and Articles 25 to 30 preserve freedom of conscience, culture, and education. Together, they create a balance between unity and diversity. This structure ensures that democracy is not merely majority rule, but justice-based governance. By guaranteeing a constitutional remedies, Part 3 empowers even the weakest citizen to challenge state action or any kind of encroachment of his or her fundamental rights. It converts India's constitutional philosophy into daily practice or practically available to everyone, ensuring that rights of minorities are protected like any other citizen and as part of the collective democratic conscience. Article 14, Equality before law. Article 14 enshrines the principle that all persons are equal before law and are entitled to equal protection of laws. It forms the foundation of all fundamental rights. The framers intended this article to prevent both legal discrimination and administrative arbitrariness. Equality does not mean uniformity, but fairness and reasonableness in state action. The Supreme Court has interpreted Article 14 dynamically, expanding its scope beyond formal equality to substantive justice. In E.P. Royappa versus State of Tamil Nadu, 1974, the court linked equality with the rule of law and non-arbitrariness. For minorities, Article 14 guarantees equal access to rights, opportunities and legal remedies irrespective of faith or culture. It ensures that the state cannot discriminate or impose burdens based on religion or language. Equality before law transforms diversity into equality in citizenship. By providing a legal shield against exclusion, Article 14 upholds the Constitution's commitment to justice and ensures that every citizen, majority or minority, stands equal before the Constitution and its courts. Articles 15 and 16, Non-Discrimination and Equal Opportunity. Article 15 and 16 operationalize the ideal of equality in social and economic life. Article 15 prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth, while Article 16 guarantees equal opportunity in public employment. These provisions are crucial for minorities because they prevent exclusion from public institutions and services. The Constitution, however, allows affirmative action to uplift socially and educationally backward groups under Article 15(4) and 16(4). This balance between non-discrimination and positive protection ensures both fairness and inclusion. Judicial interpretation has reinforced this approach, emphasizing that equality must be meaningful, not merely formal, should not be a rhetoric but a reality. For minorities, these articles provide assurance of participation in state employment and education without bias. They also underline that true secularism requires neutrality and fairness in state policy. Articles 15 and 16 therefore translate constitutional morality into governance, ensuring that every citizen, irrespective of faith or background, can contribute equally to India's democratic and development journey. Articles 19 to 22, Freedom of Expression and Personal Liberty. Articles 19, which is also called as Mini Charter of Liberty, to 22 guarantees essential freedoms that form the democratic lifeblood of the Constitution. Article 19, which is a Mini Charter of Liberties, grants the right to freedom of speech, association, movement and profession. Article 21 ensures the right to life and personal liberty, while Articles 20 to 22 protect against arbitrary arrest and punishment. These rights apply equally to all citizens, but for minorities, they hold special value as safeguards of identity and voice. Freedom of expression enables cultural and religious communities to share their perspectives without fear. The right to association protects minority organizations and institutions. Judicial interpretations, notably in Menka Gandhi versus Union of India in 1978, expanded life and liberty to include dignity, education, and privacy. Together, these rights create a participatory environment where all groups can express themselves freely within, of course, constitutional limits. No freedom is absolute, and every freedom is bound with certain reasonable restrictions. They reinforce that democracy is not only political but also social and cultural freedom. For minorities, these rights provide the assurance that individuality and community expression remain protected pillars of Indian citizenship. Articles 25 to 28, freedom of religion, which carry immense weightage for the minorities. Articles 25 to 28 constitute the constitutional guarantees of religious freedom in India. While religious freedom is guaranteed indirectly in Article 15 and 16 also, but then 25 to 28 deal with freedom of religion directly. Article 25 grants all individuals the right to profess, practice and propagate a religion. Article 26 protects the right of religious denominations to manage their own affairs, while Article 27 prohibits taxation for promoting any particular faith. And lastly, Article 28 ensures that no religious instruction is imposed in state-run institutions. They form the backbone of India's secular framework. They protect minorities' spiritual and institutional autonomy while maintaining the neutrality of the state. The Supreme Court in Bijoy Emanuel versus State of Kerala in 1986 reaffirmed that genuine belief is protected even against social pressures. Well, religious freedom in India is not absolute. It is subject to public order, morality and health, but its spirit is inclusive. This is the article which begins with restrictions subject to public order, morality, health and etc. etc. All people are entitled to freedom to right to profess, practice and propagate religion. Similarly, this is the only fundamental right which is subordinated to other fundamental rights also. Because when we talk about restrictions, the restrictions are not only of public order, morality, public health, etc., but also if the freedom of religion is at any stage in contravention with other fundamental rights, it is the other fundamental rights which are going to prevail. So the freedom of religion is not the complete or freedom or the whole, but it is only a part of the whole. It constitutes only a part of the entire framework of liberties given to individuals and citizens. So freedom of religion is not everything, it is only a part of the whole which is necessary for the well-being of an individual. Moreover, it not only gives freedom of religion but it also gives freedom from religion. By treating all religion equally, these articles preserve the plural heritage of the nation. For minorities, they represent both assurance and empowerment, the right to faith without fear, pressure, secured by constitutional authority. But along with Bijoy Emanuel, there is one again a very important case that I would like to refer here, and that is Stanislas versus State of Madhya Pradesh, wherein the last freedom given under Article 24, that is the freedom to propagate religion, that includes the right to conversion, Well, it is given to everyone to disseminate the philosophical ideas of their own religion, and conversion is also permissible under the Constitution of India, but at no stage this conversion should be under greed, pressure, force, temptation, cheating, or fraud. Articles 29 and 30 specifically safeguard the identity and autonomy of minorities. Article 29, Clause 1 protects any group's right to conserve its language, script, and culture, while Article 30, Clause 1 grants minorities the right to establish and administer educational institutions. These rights enable communities to transmit values, traditions, and knowledge to future generations. Judicial interpretations in St. Xavier's College 1974 and TMA Pi Foundation 2002 upheld these rights as essential to democracy's plural character. The Constitution allows reasonable regulation to maintain academic standards but prohibits interference with core autonomy. Through these provisions, India acknowledges that cultural diversity enriches national unity and paves way for national integration or nation building. Educational freedom empowers minorities to participate in development while preserving identity. These articles symbolize the Constitution's humane vision, one that transforms tolerance into respect. For minorities, they provide both protection and opportunity, ensuring equality through education and culture, the true instruments of social transformation in a diverse and democratic society. Article 32, Right to Constitutional Remedies, gives life to all fundamental rights by making them enforceable through the Supreme Court. Dr. Ambedkar called it the heart and soul of the Constitution. It allows any individual or group to approach the court when rights are violated. For minorities, this remedy is crucial because it provides a peaceful legal mechanism to challenge discrimination or arbitrary state action. The Supreme Court can issue writs, habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, and certiorari to enforce rights effectively and to prohibit any public or private body from acting beyond its jurisdiction or violating any of the fundamental rights of the people in any way by keeping people illegally under detention or by transgressing their own limits of jurisdiction or by even non-performing also the public authorities violate the rights of the people. This judicial power ensures that no authority stands above the Constitution. Over time, public interest litigation expanded access to justice for marginalized communities. Article 32 along with Article 226 which is applicable in high courts creates a constitutional safety net that protects all citizens equally. For minorities, it transforms legal protection into practical empowerment. It guarantees that the Constitution is not a static document but a living promise, ensuring justice, equality, and freedom for every citizen, regardless of belief or identity. Judicial interpretation and expansion of minority rights. Indian judiciary has played a defining role in interpreting fundamental rights to safeguard the rights of not only minorities but all vulnerable sections, be it women, children, or any other community. The Supreme Court has consistently affirmed that these rights are integral to the secular and democratic framework. In a State of Bombay versus Bombay Education Society in 1954, the court recognized minority institutions' a right to admit students from their own communities. In Kerala Education Bill 1958, it held that minority rights must be balanced with educational excellence. Later, TMA Pai Foundation 2002 and PA Inamda 2005 further clarified that while minorities can establish institutions, state regulation to ensure quality and fairness is permissible. These judgments show that minority rights are not isolated privileges but integral to India's constitutional morality. The judiciary's evolving interpretation also protects against both state excesses and a social prejudice. Courts have upheld that minority protection strengthens rather than divide the nation by ensuring equal participation in its democratic processes. Thus, judicial interpretation has transformed constitutional text into living principles, making equality and diversity mutually reinforcing. The basic structure doctrine and minority rights. The landmark judgment in Keshwanand Bharti versus State of Kerala 1973 introduced the doctrine of the basic structure of the constitution. It declared that Parliament's amending power under Article 368 does not extend to altering the Constitution's fundamental framework. Among these unalterable principles are secularism, equality, rule of law, etc., all vital for minority protection, and they can always confide in Indian state, a state wherein they decided to reside after partition in view of its cherished values of secularism, equality, and rule of law. The doctrine ensures that even legislative majorities cannot undermine the core rights that safeguard diversity. In subsequent cases such as S.R. Bomai 1994, secularism was reaffirmed as part of this basic structure. For minorities, this judicial innovation provides constitutional permanence. Their rights cannot be diluted by transient political pressures. It converts the philosophy of pluralism into constitutional certainty. The doctrine thus acts as a shield for minority protection, ensuring that democracy remains inclusive. It reminds the state that true strength lies in restraint and that safeguarding minorities is essential to preserving the moral and legal continuity of the republic. Public interest litigation and access to justice. Public interest litigation, developed since 1980s, has expanded access to justice for marginalized and minority groups. It stands for all the victimized groups who are poor, vulnerable, and are not in a position to fight for themselves. Minorities are no exception for that. It allows any public-spirited citizen to approach courts for the enforcement of fundamental rights. The Supreme Court in S.P. Gupta versus Union of India in 1981 and People's Union for Democratic Rights versus Union of India 1982 redefined standing to promote social justice. PILs have been filed for protection of minority, educational institutions, communal harmony, and prevention of discrimination. This procedural innovation converts constitutional guarantees into collective remedies. For minorities who may lack resources or representation, PIL provides a voice within the legal system. It democratizes judicial access and transforms rights from abstract ideals into tangible protections. The judiciary's active role through PIL has made the Constitution a living instrument for social change. It also strengthens the moral authority of fundamental rights by ensuring that their protection does not depend on power or privilege or money, but on justice accessible to every citizen. Through PIL, every vulnerable group, every group which is poor, unaware of the law, even if aware of the law, unable to approach the court because of financial constraints, The public interest litigation is there to protect their fundamental rights. The relationship between fundamental rights and DPSPs, uh, it is often said that civil and political rights enshrined in fundamental rights are more important than the social economic rights enshrined in DPSPs. But this is not true. When we became independent, we were in an extremely pathetic condition. We were economically poor and we were lacking industries, power structure, roads, railways, infrastructure, heavy industries, etc., etc. And the state was poor, not in a position to guarantee a number of social economic rights which are enshrined in the DPSPs. And therefore, to give some time to the state, while fundamental rights were made justiciable, directive principles were not declared justiciable, nevertheless fundamental in the governance of the country. They together form the moral and structural balance of the Constitution. While fundamental rights are enforceable, DPSPs express social economic goals guiding state policy. The Supreme Court in Minerva Mill versus Union of India 1980 held that the harmony between these two paths constitutes the basic structure of the Constitution. For minorities, this relationship ensures that legal equality is supported by social welfare measures. Economic and educational advancement under the directive principles complements the rights to culture, religion, and education under Part 3. Policies for scholarships, skill development, and linguistic preservation derive inspiration from this linkage. The two sets of provisions thus operate in partnership. Rights provide protection, and directive principles provide empowerment. Together, they ensure that the promise of equality becomes a live experience for all, particularly for minorities who have historically faced exclusion, and not only minorities but a number of historically and socially subjugated groups. These dynamic balance sustains India's constitutional vision of justice in all its dimensions: legal, social, and moral. Limits and reasonable restrictions on fundamental rights. Fundamental rights in India are not absolute. They are subject to reasonable restrictions necessary for maintaining public order, morality, and security. At any stage or at no stage, the rights should become an instrument of nuisance, because we are a multicultural society, multilinguistic society, and people belonging to different faith, religion, identity exist in India, and therefore the social fabric is very, very delicate, and we need to handle our rights or enjoy our rights in a very sensitive manner. For instance, Article 19 permits restrictions on speech to prevent incitement or communal hatred. Similarly, Articles 25 and 26 allow regulation of religious practices inconsistent with public welfare and social reform or other secular activities. The test of reasonableness developed through judicial interpretation protects both freedom and order. The Supreme Court in Asha Ranjan versus State of Bihar 2017 reaffirmed that rights must harmonize with the collective good. For minorities, these restrictions protect genuine expression while preventing misuse of rights for divisive purposes. And at the same time, the minorities should also be cautious about the special rights which are being given to them to protect their culture, religion, language, and script, that they should not surpass their own limits, and they should never give the message of extra benefits or extra patronization or appeasement as has been felt by majority over the years. Reasonable limits preserve secularism by ensuring equality among faiths. The balance between liberty and responsibility reflects constitutional morality in practice. It ensures that the exercise of rights contribute to fraternity and peace, making freedom a disciplined instrument of justice rather than a cause of conflict. Secularism and equality in practice. In practice, India's secularism operates through the equal treatment of all religions under the Constitution. The state neither promotes nor suppresses any faith, but ensures freedom for all. There is no state religion in India. It is not a theocratic state. It is neither religious nor anti-religious, rather a-religious, and will intervene only when required for social welfare or common good. Equality under Articles 14, 15 and 25 forms the constitutional basis of secularism. Landmark judgments like S.R. Bomaye, Arora Roy versus Union of India emphasize that secularism means positive neutrality, not indifference. That means the state has the power to intervene whenever the religion becomes a nuisance. Minority protections such as cultural and educational rights derive legitimacy from this framework. Policies on language, education and welfare illustrate secular equality in action. Yet, the effectiveness of secularism depends on social behavior and political ethics. The Constitution can provide legal balance, but public morality ensures its success. When citizens respect each other's belief, secularism transforms from a legal doctrine into a live value. Thus, equality and secularism together sustain India's unique democratic fabric, where freedom of religion becomes a source of unity rather than division. Challenges to fundamental rights and minority protection. Despite constitutional safeguards, minorities continue to face social and institutional challenges. Issues such as discrimination, underrepresentation, and hate speech test the resilience of fundamental rights. Hate speeches are common on the part of both all kinds of political leaders, whether belonging to the majority community or the minority community. Issues of discrimination and issues of separation or isolation prevail on both the sides of the line, be it the majority or the minority. Rapid digital communication has also amplified misinformation and intolerance. Implementation gaps in education and employment program weaken constitutional promises. The judiciary and commissions work to address these gaps, but sustained civic commitment is needed. Strengthening minority protections requires both state policy and social empathy and efforts on the part of each and every individual, what we call enlightened community. And this enlightened community includes people from both majority as well as the minority. The spirit of Articles 14, 19 and 25 to 30 must be upheld not just legally but culturally also. As Ambedkar warned, constitutional ideals can be undermined by societal prejudice. Therefore, protecting fundamental rights requires vigilance, dialogue, and ethical governance on the part of everyone, be it a majority or a minority community. While minority need to create a sense of belongingness, the majority needs to create a sense of security for the minority. Overcoming these challenges will determine whether India's democracy remains inclusive and humane. True national strength lies in ensuring that every citizen, regardless of community, can live with dignity, equality and freedom under the protective umbrella of the Constitution. To conclude, the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution are more than legal provisions. They represent a moral commitment to equality in diversity. They convert the preamble's ideals into enforceable guarantees of freedom and justice. For minorities, they serve as both shield and bridge, a shield against discrimination and a bridge to full participation in national life. But one should not forget that along with fundamental rights, there are fundamental duties also that need to be fulfilled both by people belonging to majority community as well as the minority community. The judicial interpretation, institutional safeguards, and social reforms continuously renew their relevance. The strength of Indian democracy lies in this constitutional balance, protecting individuality while nurturing collective harmony. However, as Ambedkar reminded, rights must be preserved by constant awareness and moral responsibility. One has to be very aware of their own rights and responsibilities both. The protection of minority is not merely about law, it is about the conscience of the nation. When every citizen upholds equality and fraternity, fundamental rights achieve their true purpose. They transform diversity into unity, ensuring that India remains a republic of justice, liberty, and dignity for all, where constitutional morality is the living soul of democracy. Thank you.